Well, hello everyone. Thank you very much for attending this. We know it's not the most convenient time, so I appreciate you are with us today. I am lucky enough to be moderating this panel of these incredible leaders, and they are leading key initiatives around how apply AI responsibly to build what's next for education. So thank you for being with us today. They are pretty well known in the industry, but we wanted to make an introduction, having them to explain a little bit about their organization, because there is a lot of people watching us that most probably are not that familiar with education. So maybe we can start with around this introduction. First of all, I'm Jesus Gomez. I work in the public sector team for Google Cloud and in the industry leader for digital natives.
Hi everybody, I'm Lev Gonick. I work at Arizona State University. I am ASU's Chief Information Officer, and I get a chance to work with an incredible collection of people. I'll get a chance to talk about the work we're doing in AI and online education with our colleagues from Ed+. Anant?
Thank you for having me here. It's a real pleasure. My name is Anant Agarwal, founder of edX, professor at MIT, and Chief Platform Officer at edX2U. edX is a platform company where we partner with some of the world's top institutions like Google and MIT, Harvard, Oxford, Cambridge, and others, where they offer their courses and content on edX. And we have over 76 million learners from every single country in the world who are learning on a platform where they learn about pretty much any topic you want, from courses all the way to complete degrees.
And I'm Miguel Amigot. I'm the CTO of iblEducation.com. We simplify access to generative AI for instructors and content creators to empower themselves to build AI mentors for their students, quite containing their custom prompts, data sets, and among others, we work for NVIDIA, for the Department of Defense, MIT, and many others. And thank you.
Fantastic. So as you can see, they are leaders from different type of organization, top higher education institution, top of line content platform, and a tech company. We're going to go through a panel with some interesting questions that you may find really relevant and learn from them. Before that, we wanted to spend just a couple of minutes taking a look at statistics about the global challenges that education organizations are facing today. Okay, for those that are not very familiar, but just to give you an idea, there are more than 250 million children and youth that are out of the school right now, that they don't have access to school. Even those that have access to school have experienced significant learning loss. You may have seen a lot of articles about that, but the average, for example, the average US student lost half academic year because of the pandemic. So it's not only about having access to school, it's about how efficient the school can be. And the third is the need of upskilling the workers. So all of us are part of that workforce, and you may have seen this, but there is a prediction that 50% of us will need to be retrained in this decade to prepare to the rapidly changing job market that we are facing. Those are the challenges that we are all facing in the industry. What we have learned is that this AI innovation that we are all experiencing are addressing many of these challenges. A lot of organizations and companies are looking into how they apply the AI to try to address those challenges. There are many fields on that, but what we are hearing from all of you, three main priorities. One is about providing AI-powered tutoring and advising to the students. We saw the statistics before, so it's about how you can provide a private tutor even to those that cannot afford it, okay, giving them access to that school. The second bucket is about personalized learning. I know that Lev will say we have been hearing about personalized learning for 20 years now. But this is the possibility of not only giving them access to school, but giving them the right plan of learning, okay, that is tailored to the priorities. And the third one is about the possibility of using AI to automate the generation of content and make that content as relevant and accessible as possible to them. This is the challenges that we are facing today. It's a start to learn from our guest speakers, and the first question that I have is, from all the potential that AI has on education and responsible AI has for education, what do you think is the value that this innovation about AI is going to bring to, for example, give equitable access to high quality of education?
Well, I think it's a really big topic, and we stand between you and LJ Cool, and so we'll try to be as entertaining as we can. And I know these folks here, so no problem there. You actually are going to want a standing O for us, so that you don't actually have to get to the concert in 45 minutes. To be very serious, AI is obviously not new. There is a new kind of excitement around generative AI at the moment. And it's really worth trying to understand, what opportunities come with that. There are those who are predicting that this marks the end of higher education. For those of us who've been in that industry for a while, announcements of our forthcoming death have been probably overstated many, many times. And really for us at ASU, which is one of the, if not the largest public university in the country, we have 178,000 students, 80,000 of them are actually studying online, 300 degrees offered by our faculty. The most important piece actually is around this commitment to inclusion. It's a fundamental opportunity for us to actually look at this differently. It's not whether or not universities will be around. Some have said the end of the professoriate, the end of the universities as we know it. The real question is not whether we'll be here in the next 500 years, it's actually whether or not we're going to be relevant in the next 500 years. And I think that AI actually done properly with, again, proper ethical use, proper framing of the opportunities to rethink assessment and all of those things, really affords us a chance to democratize, to radically democratize the opportunities and access to education. Not only are the data that you shared, Jesus, are real, but 41 million Americans have started college and not finished. That is an enormous challenge. Can we use AI to support pathways back into college, whether it's through a platform play or whether through many other kinds of opportunities, and the opportunity to do mass customization is certainly very relevant. And again, hopefully, through this dialogue today, we'll be able to give you all kinds of examples of, I would say, catalytic work that is being used to address the access mission at ASU that others are using across this industry as well, which are not only for universities and education, but also for training opportunities that are out there, and using the AI capabilities that, again, have been part of a journey for the last 50 years to really help us take out the tedium associated with the traditional industrial model of education, which still dominates a huge part of our industry, to create really great opportunities for value add, liberating, and creating value, opportunities for time to be spent in ways that otherwise have been consumed with a lot of tedium and administrivia. We are seeing huge examples of that for the last, certainly 2 years at ASU. Again, hopefully I'll get a chance to share some of those examples. But, as opposed to running away from AI or trying to put barriers up around AI at ASU, we're all in, leaning in. Again, with the guardrails that everything we do, whether it's our faculty ethics committee that reviews all of our AI proposals and the like, to really try to accelerate this in the service of access to education, whether you're a traditional student or, more likely going forward, a student who's re-entering the workforce through the workforce in one way, shape, or form.
As you look at radical new technologies coming out, they impact virtually every field known to mankind. But there's really two fields that, if you look at history, have stood immune to almost all new radical changes. One is education, and the second is government. Those two never change. And if you look at education, people joke about what was the biggest innovation in education. And some people point back to the textbook in the 1500s. Others point to the chalkboard in the 1800s. So education doesn't change very quickly. But I think with digital learning, particularly with the advent of massive open online courses, scalable digital learning about a dozen years ago, and now AI, these two have been incredible forces for change in online learning. Has it impacted campus learning? Not a whole lot. Maybe in some campuses, ASU, one of our partners, has been very innovative. But by and large, you don't see much changing on campus. But both digital learning as well as AI are radically changing the way education is offered. So on edX, for example, with the digital education model, we have over 76 million learners learning on edX. 5 million students around the world have taken a computer science course and learned coding from David Malin at Harvard. Previously he would teach 300 students at Harvard, and now there's 5 million around the world. And so the scale can be massive. So with digital learning, we impacted scale in a big way. What AI can do is now allow us to personalize and take quality to the next level. Lev, I think, briefly alluded to mass customization. So if you look at the fourth industrial revolution, it's about mass personalization. How do we create scale, yet how do we create personalized outcomes? So I think digital learning combined with AI can allow us to get that massive scalable access combined with personalized outcomes. So on edX, we've released a number of tools in recent times, partnering with some amazing technologies out of Google and others that enable us to offer a lot of these AI affordances within courses or for faculty authoring. So for example, we launched edX Expert with a big capital X. Looks like big X's are a big thing out there. So this is a big X PERT. And so you can go into my circuits. I teach an online circuits course from MIT on edX. And you can go into my circuits course, log into edX.org, it's free, go into the course, and the expert will show up and you can ask it any questions. And it will serve as an expert tutor. And actually check it out, it's a lot of fun. Even as an instructor, I love to go in and ask expert all kinds of things to say, can I stump it? It's pretty darn good. And so it's actually a lot of fun, that even as a professor, to go in and ask and play around with AI inside my own course. And I love to ask it questions to see how will it explain it. One question I ask, okay, how would Agarwal teach this topic? And so yeah, you can actually have some fun with it. But you can see how we're personalizing learning to each individual, where each individual can get personalized support rather than kind of a mass scale program. It's also very important for us to launch courses and content to teach people AI. And so we launched a master's degree in AI and machine learning from UT Austin for $10,000. And you won't believe the number of people, the number of applications we've received as people are looking to upskill and reskill very rapidly in this new age. You saw that 50%, okay, previous slide, 50% need upskilling. Well, it's because of AI and digital transformation. So we can use online learning to help people upskill very rapidly. So we launched the master's degree in AI. We launched a boot camp. It's a much shorter program in AI. And we've also partnered with IBL, who's here, in creating very, very short programs in topics like introduction to Gen AI and broad general AI topics. And there's just a huge amount of upsurge in interest. So whether you're teaching AI or whether you're using AI for personalization, I think we've just begun scratching the surface. And as a professor, I just cannot tell you how excited I am for the future.
So echoing off of what you're saying about personalization and inclusion, we like to start looking at this problem from the point of view of all these students right now who are not being educated as they could be, right? And we have, for example, a partner, it's a big university, 20% of the students they accept come from disadvantaged backgrounds, right? These are not students who have an excellent understanding of math, right? So they go into the university, their understanding of math is not at that required level. So when they look at anything technical to major in, their choice is either, right, I'm going to spend a couple of extra years here, or I'm just going to study something else. right? And that happens for a lot of people. So there are a lot of people who don't have, because of the circumstances that they've grown up in, that opportunity to do something as basic as study engineering, right? And for us, sort of, that's the beginning of the conversation, right? It's mass personalization and inclusion. And the way we like to do that is by saying, okay, well, just like these students who are studying math, right? There are many students in other circumstances, right, who are studying their own assessments. We are engineers. I don't really know what the best pedagogy is to teach an 8th grader history or some sophomore in college biology. So instead, what we like to do is say, okay, the instructors are going to be able to create their mentors, right? And they're going to be able to mess around with the prompts, right? There are other solutions that have come out recently. So obviously there's the Khan Academy famous approach. We like to, in some ways, say, okay, well, the instructors are going to have access to the data and to the prompts because they're going to know better, right? Some engineer somewhere else who are going to, push an update is not really going to be helpful for an engineer, for a teacher who knows how to tinker with the optimal prompts. So we like to do that. So it's equity for and inclusion for the students who are otherwise, kind of in trouble right now, and also for the instructors, because we think, until that problem is solved, let's say until every student is being educated to the, to the level that we want and that they're happy with, then there is, not much else to talk about. Let's say, jobless and so on. I mean, it's just, there's still a massive amount of work to do. It's not done, right? So.
Can I just jump in for a second here? And delivery of actual curriculum is one big boulder. The other piece is actually everything outside of the classroom is part of educational success. And so, again, the great opportunity here is to, again, and statement, not an or statement, is to also think about all the opportunities to use AI coaching, which is not necessarily around content and content mastery, which, yes, absolutely is now more adaptive than ever before, but also the idea of the scaffolding that it takes, especially when you're talking about the student group or the learner group that is actually, generally speaking, not successful. It's oftentimes fundamentals, basic things, study skills, time management skills, how to actually find resources in the community to deal with stress and anxiety, all the things that are very real and especially impact students who are typically at risk. And again, with AI, more than ever before, we can actually we can do mass personalization by actually taking a complete, as it were, end-to-end view of the student experience. We know a lot about the student. The more they're willing to share with us, the more we can provide not only great curriculum.
Include things like career coaching and so on. So
absolutely.
Why stop at teaching them calculus or engineering and so on, but go all the way to say, okay, what do you want to be when you grow up, right? What interests you, right? What skills do you have? So you can have this kind of conversation with them to figure out what it is they need to learn, how do they need to learn it, and maybe there are some areas they need to shore up and get the right career skills as well. So I think a chance to go end to end, like you said.
And I think a huge opportunity, especially for the entrepreneurs, who are here. A great opportunity. Again, they're building blocks, and then let's not forget the scaffolding that, again, most students today come to school in order to get a job. So let's help them get the kind of job that is, again, maybe not even in their immediate view. Maybe just by getting to know them better and seeing where they have strengths, have an opportunity to introduce them to new pathways.
In fact, we're talking about scaffolding. Here's an interesting result. So you'll hear a lot of people talking about, oh, we did this with AI and did that with AI. I think I'll throw in how about some hard numbers and some data. So we introduced a AI assistant in our boot camps. So we have intense live human beings helping learners. But it turns out to contact a live human being, you may take some time. So live human beings are still there. But we introduced an AI assistant and tutor that can provide real-time, like instantaneous support to learners. And we made that available to bootcamp learners. We found that, okay, let me ask the audience. The number of students that preferred initially talking to the AI assistant expert versus a live instructor, what ratio do you think it was? The percentage of people that preferred to talk to the AI assistant versus the live assistant as their first step. Somebody want to guess? What percentage? 50-50?
Or over 50.
Okay, over 50. 80% prefer talking to AI. This is data. 99%. So
Wow.
we looked at the number of interactions. 99 were to AI, 1 to a human. Now, of course, the human's very important because we could escalate things to a human so they could answer. And then we asked the students, why is it that you are more comfortable talking to AI than to a human? They said, I'm shy talking to a human. No, this is AI, it's impersonal, so it's just so much easier to say random things and not look stupid in front of a computer.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. When I came to US 13 years ago, my English was even worse than now. And this type of tool actually helps you to build self-confidence.
Yeah.
So if you have the possibility of reaching out to an intelligent tutor first and build that self-confidence, that's much better. And we actually have been told many times that professors are seeing a lot of value on giving, for example, a student the possibility of having a private tutoring before coming into the class. So they reduce that variability of knowledge coming into the class.
Right. Can I just offer another data point? I mean, I love that we're maybe talking about building on data here. So every student in this country has to submit a financial aid form. It is one of the first barriers to success, that first impression that students and their families have of university. In the last 14 days, ASU had 83,000 separate students approach our experience center, the call center. And like Anant was talking about with respect to the way you use the bot, we also have, over the last couple of years, created essentially an AI-driven machine learning based on natural language processing interactions through chats and other things to actually, and there, again, not numbers like 99 to 1, but again, when you're scaling with that kind of a peak, you can't put enough people on the phones to deal with that number over such a short period of time. And so 42% of all students chose to actually interact with Sunny. Sunny, being from Arizona, is our bot, and resolved, 42% of them resolved their issue without then again, escalate to human in the middle, which again is just a concrete way of getting to scale, which is, again, I think the overall challenge, as well as being able to customize it.
That's perfect. So as you can see, their energy and their passion, really excited about this. It is strange when a technology come up, it is strange that all the players actually agree on the potential of the technology. Is many times it's like somebody's going to push back or is going to be concerned. So this is one of these times when you see that this type of technology, actually the people know that this is happening, right? And the benefits outweighs the potential risk. So one question that I have is, this is changing traditional institutions. People say this is happening, how we get this right? So a question I have for you is, how do you embrace and shape this technology, and how do you, as you lead your teams, make sure that this technology is being embraced responsibly at your institution?
So let's say, what we're trying to do is, in general, not push a top-down solution for everybody, right? What we like to do is say, okay, so for whether we're talking about instructors, or there could be even engineers, right, or whoever is building on our applications, is you have access to this data, right? Here is how the grounding is done, right? And we obviously have layers of abstraction depending on how complex somebody wants to get, right? But you have access to that. You have access to all the system prompts. You have access to all the guardrails, right? So when you come up with an approach to guardrail your application in the approach that you think is best, then you can implement it without us, right? So we are effectively building blocks. We have, of course, the default guardrails and default configurations, like only answer if you find the question in the text and so on. But this is, it's pretty powerful. And since we have on one hand, universities, on other companies, governments, etc., there are different people's different values, different approaches. What we like to do is, here are all the tools, so it's not massively overwhelming, but you encode your values and your approach into this.
I think the way to approach is that any new technology is going to have far-reaching impacts, whether positive or negative. I love to quote Shakespeare here, where Shakespeare said, there's nothing good or bad. It's only think it, make it, it's so. Like a knife, right? You can do good or you can do harm. So same thing with AI. It's how many of you have seen Oppenheimer? It's the same. They all struggled with the same challenge. Here was a incredibly powerful, physics-based quantum technology, and they could do all kinds of things with it. And so AI is just like that. And my answer to the question is actually very simple, which is, as long as the forces for good very, very rapidly make progress and do good stuff with it, we will hopefully overwhelm the bad stuff. And so the key is not to try to prevent the bad stuff by legislation, but to move very quickly and create APIs and create tools like IBL is doing. Create them, release them, put them in the open source domain so that more and more people can get access to these tools so that the good overwhelms the bad uses of technology. And so rather than using AI to cheat, let's create graders with AI. Let's create all kinds of technologies that will help students. So by just overwhelm the system with good stuff. And I think that is the way to think about it. And even by building all of these things, we can create various ethical boundaries and guardrails. And I'm sure you'll talk about that. So let me pause there. But really, let's use AI for good very rapidly, release the tools as open source, get them out there, get people using it.
Just to quote another English author, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. I mean, and I think that is kind of the reality every time a new technology actually gets introduced into the mix. If I can, I just want to sort of connect the question to the morning keynote, which for those of you who weren't able to attend and those of you online who weren't able to, was actually about legacy organizations, and the challenge of actually introducing AI into actually a technical legacy organization. And I run a fairly large, there are over 2,000 IT professionals at ASU supporting this huge enterprise, including the online world that we've chatted a little bit about. And one of the biggest challenges, and again, I know enough about your story to know that institutionally and personally you've had to grapple with this as well. How do you actually begin to engage with, not only to talk about the upside opportunity with AI, but to actually have people whose identity is associated with, quote unquote, a pre-AI sort of experience. And when they look in the mirror, they don't see themselves as actually being part of this radical catalytic transformation opportunity. And so at ASU, much as, again, I've learned as much from Anant and the MIT work, we're actually creating, as we did with ASU Online, an organization that sits outside of the core legacy organization, because it is not motivated to embrace. It sees it at a minimum as a threat, and people can be either proactively or passively aggressive to the whole idea. And so we've created a fusion team. It's a very modest team, but it's one of the few early models in higher education to actually move a legacy organization, one that's not born digital, as you all have done through, I think, a fairly similar journey, and seeing whether or not that will actually propel folks who, again, we're not going to discount or eliminate all of the appropriate concerns around ethics and bias when we stand up these teams, but these are teams who are being charged with taking a mountain without worrying that there is nothing but thorns and fire everywhere they go, snakes biting at them, because they've been given privilege as a fusion team to actually stand up this work. It's got all of our best talent associated with us from across ASU, not just inside enterprise technology.
Yeah. So a lot of change management in the equation, for sure. Yeah. Many of our people in the audience may be wondering, what is your experience working with Google and the journey with Google? And a lot of people ask us about, we want to do this, but how we get started, right? So one question I have is if you can explain to the audience your experience, what type of initiative you are partnering with Google about to start.
Sure. You want to go? Go ahead.
Sure. Well, I mean, we find, and this is not to be a suck up, right? But what Google is doing is generally 2 to 3 months ahead of what the mainstream is talking about, right? So you see with the keynote, the keynote yesterday, right? So you have now Llama 2, right? So these are for the people who want to completely fine-tune their own models with the convenience of not having to deploy their own clusters and so on, right? So you still do that, right, with the data governance requisites. And on the other end, you also have Bison, right? And all of these sort of pay-as-you-go tiny models for people who want to, spend more cautiously, right? So Google seems to be, said and instead of or. Google is, for us, on the big model, right, where you have complete control, also on the little model. The vector databases, for example, PG Vector, right? It seems to be a standard. Okay, Google already comes out with, what was it, Alloy, that is already insanely faster than the default. So you look at that, and then you look at the larger ecosystem of education, right? Everybody, with their data in Google Classroom and so on, and well, it's pretty helpful, right, to be able to say, okay, well, you don't have to now be shipping out all of your data, because this is really useful if you have access to the data. It's not really that great for all the data, for example, from Google Classroom to have to be migrated somewhere else, so then you can, do some language model application on top. With Google, you would say, okay, I have all of my Google Classroom data here, I have my, other student analytics here, and I'm going to have in the same ecosystem these models, whether I want them big or small, more control, less control, more pricing or less pricing. It's still, within the answer. So, good job.
We've certainly been very pleasantly surprised. We did a lot of evaluation. I'll give you one example of a big collaboration we have with Google. And just so you all know, at edX, there's nothing small. I like to joke that unless something has 6 zeros in it, it's not interesting to me. So we have 4,000 courses on our platform, 76 million learners learning. And so one of the aspects of personalization is that how do we personalize language? I was in Andhra Pradesh 2 weeks ago in India. It's Telugu there, and so how do you create translations? And it used to be pretty expensive before, where there's a lot of there's some machine translation, but there was a fair amount of hand correction and tuning that was required previously. But now one of the projects we've embarked with Google on is this translation into a large number of languages. And we've released a number of our courses translated into 12 languages. And our work right now, what we found to be very pleasant is that the work we're doing is actually not in tuning the translations. It's really in building the plumbing, where the translations happen so quickly, and they are pretty darn good, that the work that we've done to kind of optimize the translation is no longer needed. But the plumbing we're building is, how do we rapidly send our courses and content and get the translations and populate them? I mean, that's the part we're now focused on. I call it kind of the plumbing. And so that's been very successful. And we're focused on, if someone makes a change to a course, how do we incrementally get new translations? We were looking to do incremental translations. But then we found that it's fast enough and the cost is pretty decent, that why bother with incrementalism? Just do it again. And so, sometimes with good technology, a sledgehammer is actually a pretty darn good tool. So we've really enjoyed some of these affordances in quality and scale that the Google team has been able to give us.
Yeah, I'll simply add and maybe just build on that example that there are probably 20 projects that we're working on with Google. And just to be clear, ASU is working with all the other suspects as well. But in particular, in the Google space, we have an initiative which you're all welcome to take a look at, which is called the 100 Million Learner Initiative. It's an effort essentially to provide to people around the world access to a collection of course materials focused on entrepreneurship. And one of the key requirements is actually the ability to do translation into starting with 40 languages. And again, figuring out that pipeline activity, we've worked with Google from day one to build what we call the Language Factory, which is now part of Google's overall pipeline support for translation. And great, again, presentations here about your partnership with NVIDIA to actually accelerate that work even further. But in addition to that, James Manica, who owns AI, for Google, has just been a fabulous resource for all the ways, as it were, almost in addition to, but with everyone focused and maybe perseverating on generative AI, all the other AI kinds of projects that are underway in the environment, whether those are visual, sound, video. We've actually created, there's an announcement that was made a couple months ago on a project to essentially provide a generative AI curriculum in a Chromebook. Delivered day one, all the curriculum, pop it open, and no matter where that child is, not only do they have the curriculum, but they have also got the intelligent tutor on board along the way. And again, that came from James started going, right, we'd love to work with a university that's interested in the mission, just to tie it back to your first point about inclusion, so that there's a $200 or $250 solution when you can load up all that curriculum and make it available. And those are the kinds of innovation activities that we expect from Google because of the breadth of the interest here. And obviously opportunities to now look to how do we take all of the exciting work that's going on inside AI and begin to look for Google to step into a solutions orientation. Here's the problem set. You don't have to worry about all the complexity of dealing with the various business units inside Google, but if you want to be incorporating, we will actually resolve that for you and bring it to you, hopefully at a friendly higher education pricing model that works.
No, one of the things that why we love partnering with you all as well is when we show you the technology and we say like, hey, let me show you something about technology we're working on. You come up with these very crazy but valuable ideas about, oh, I could use that for this. And we are like, oh, wow, we never thought about it. This is really solid. As industry leaders, visionaries, what does get you excited in the next year? What do you think, if we meet here in this room next year, you will love to talk about?
So let's see. All right. So a few different things, right? So one, obviously, a student who is otherwise, tougher to educate gets educated, right? But from one very direct example, because we talk more with instructors, right? And we talk more with the engineers at these organizations than with the students themselves, is somebody go from, oh, I'm scared about this, it's gonna steal my job, I don't wanna do it, to, oh, this is actually really nice. So for example, we have a professor, a mutual friend, Lorena from the George Washington University, right? Who says, okay, one of the useful things about this is if this tells me what the questions that students have are. Right, because they still see the history and so on. So now I know better what my students are thinking. Therefore, in my instruction the next day, I can do things and I can say things that I would not have otherwise said. Right, so that's a very nice reversal. So what we're seeing is that anybody who is able to sort of take a look and say, okay, what did I even get into education for? Right, presumably it was to help people and educate people, and now I can do something that I couldn't do before. Right? An engineer, for example, that says, okay, I can build an application that's now an order of magnitude cooler, right? Because I can build on these APIs and these SDKs to now do something that I couldn't do before. So that, from an engineering standpoint and trying to build is pretty cool.
For me, I'll give a very boring answer, actually, as to what we'll see next year. It's very clear that the whole field is moving exponentially. You mentioned that the Google stays ahead by 2 months. And just so you know, 2 months, that seems little, but no, this is an exponential field. And so, every second is like, in previous terminology, years. But the very simple, boring thing that I will say is data. So right now, this year is about letting 1,000 flowers bloom. We've launched maybe a half a dozen tools within edX, working with Google and several other innovators in the field in AI. And we've launched translations that I talked about. We've launched tools that help professors create summarizations of their content according to a 10th grader or a 3rd grader. We can do that, and we've launched it. Various forms of assistants and tutors helping inside courses. Tools that help learners find the right content and find the right pathways. So it's really let 1,000 flowers bloom and try out lots of new things. At the same time, we're now gradually moving into a domain of data. Trying to learn, all right, having the school assistant is fine, but what's the point? Did it really help the learner learn better? What were the outcomes? So we're now gearing up to do a lot of A/B tests. So one of the big innovations in the edX platform, and it's pretty much the only major learning platform that has A/B testing built into it. So any professor can run an A/B test like this. You guys know this.
Perfect.
Where I can create an A, B, C, D path and give everybody a common test at the end. And so a lot of these tests are being planned and will be run. And so by next year, there'll be a lot of data that will come out that says, look, all of this stuff is useless. It actually hurts students.
Right.
So then we'll have to really think about, whoa, that's not good. On the other hand, it may say that it's actually helped students. It's engaged them more. Or by addressing their questions and doubts and teaching methodologies, changes in teaching methodologies, they'll learn better. So we will get a lot more data. And my hope is that we will have a lot more concrete evidence in terms of what is working and what is not. What are the kinds of things we should be doing? What are the kind of things we should not be doing? So to me, that's a big one.
So I'll just sort of, in bullet form say that this Fusion team that I referred to has a flagship 250 initiatives that we're working on. 30 of them are actually with Ed Plus, our online program for ASU Online. I think that sort of two major differences a year from now, which will show whether or not we're maturing in the way, and I'll pick up on the first one on data here, is whether or not we can actually show, especially for online learners, because that is where the opportunity is in my view in terms of access and sort of all the critical variables in that slide that you showed, is persistence. Can we use AI to show that students will persist to complete their class, finish their course of study, get their certificate, their credential, or their degree? That will be one of the key indicators. And the other piece is, if we're really good, and this is more than just, as it were, kind of a fad, we will actually be able to have an intellectual framework that actually starts with a commitment to a new kind of literacy. And we have, again, lots of debates in education about forms of literacy. And although I hate the term prompt engineering, it is a form of literacy in terms of exploration and essentially the critical tool sets you need to explore a very different, vast knowledge base, not using a literacy for being able to search, but actually a literacy that is based on your ability to prompt. And that piece of it is today really just for the cognoscente. And so we have one of the core courses that we're actually building now is, again, I hate the term, but it's prompt engineering for everyone. And that is a fundamental piece of it. And if we do it right, then we hope this will be across the curriculum beyond higher education, because that literacy is actually a central thing. And we'll see a year from now we're making progress.
Did you guys build the course on prompt engineering on edX?
Yeah,
I'm totally with you. Some of these new competencies, right? New phrases that we never heard before,
right?
Like prompt engineering, or like learning about generative AI. And what is unfortunate is that that number, the 50% of the world will need upskilling. 50% workers need to be retrained in this decade to solve the skills gap. Frankly, new technologies are coming out so fast. How many of you had heard the phrase prompt engineering 6 months ago? Okay, fine.
This is the Google crowd here.
The Google crowd, there you go. But today, everybody's talking about prompt engineering. It's a new thing. It's a whole new field. There are courses in prompt engineering. Right. And so that is one of those examples of things where people have to be retrained. So as new technologies come out, that number is actually increasing. And so it's actually not decreasing.
Amazing. Well, we are on time. The other day I was reading and I saw like Thomas Edison invented the light bulb more than 150 years ago, and still more than 1 billion people do not have access to power. So we really want to thank you for what you do for your communities and making sure that people have access to this opportunity for all of them. And thank you for all of you for attending, and I encourage you to watch out for what these guys and their organizations are doing in the next years to come, because they are going to help us a lot.
Enjoy the concert.
Thank you.